I mean, if you look at what President Chirac said, one interpretation of it, and this is what the French did say, was not that he was saying that he would never support another resolution, but that not now, that he still wanted to give the inspections process more time. And I think we keep on coming back to this point, and we've had both David Manning and Jeremy Greenstock saying to us that it really would have been desirable if we had given ourselves more time. In a sense, it was the abruptness with which the whole exercise had to come to a close that gave it this sort of drama, but also that there was no way out because the Americans had lost faith in the process and just wanted to get on with it.
So, Lawrence, I mean, I know there's been some textual analysis of the use by President Chirac of the word le soir, but I watched him say this, and I took that as no more than saying this evening, comma, and then he announces France will, whatever the circumstances, he says, all right? I mean, if he was saying, look, you know, just for tonight we're going to veto, but not tomorrow, he would have said that. But I mean, this was a great Chiracian pronouncement. Whatever the circumstances, he says, La France will.
But the basic point is that things have been brought to a head, not with Saddam particularly, but between allies within the Security Council, and that relations have broken down by this point, so that we were not going to get a second resolution. Can I just, because I'm sure other colleagues want to get in, let me just conclude with asking a couple of questions as to where we were at this point. After the middle of February, the Americans did go along with the effort to get a second resolution. But it was very clear that this was as a political favour to the United Kingdom, that because it was believed that Tony Blair would find it very difficult to get a parliamentary majority, retain the cabinet, without a second resolution. Is that a fair statement?
Well, I think the fair analysis is that it would be more difficult. I mean, in the event he did get a majority, but unquestionably, had we had a second resolution, first of all and above all, we might have avoided the war. But secondly, if we had not done so, there would have been wider international and domestic consent.
And the second question is, was there a point, either after the second set of presentations by Blix and Al-Baradei and the big demonstrations in mid-February, or after the breakdown of the second resolutions, when you, colleagues, felt this isn't going where we wanted it to go? Let's stop and think and question, do we need to take another course?
I mean, certainly, I was profoundly concerned about the anger of a very large proportion of the British public, which included many friends of mine as well, many personal friends. My constituency of Blackburn has a very large population of people of Asian heritage and of Muslim faith. And most of those were very angry, and so was quite a high proportion of the white population. I mean, the demonstration sort of added to that, but if you're an active constituency member of Parliament, as am I, you know what people are feeling. So I was fully aware of that. My efforts, as those of Colin Powell, were to just keep on working to try and get a peaceful resolution. And I believed it possible, either as a result of sufficient Iraqi compliance that Dr. Blix could come forward and say, You look at the tests in OP4, they're complying. And as I said, if you look at those tests, they were not tests really of substance.
But you weren't going to get that.
Well,
and so the question is, at a point where you weren't going to get it, was there, for example, a plan B that you could turn to?
Well, sorry, with great respect, we didn't know we weren't going to get it. I mean, on this, you're talking about mid-February.
Well, from mid-February to the next few weeks.
Yeah, but I mean, we didn't know that. And I mean, you yourself, Sir Lawrence, has said that Dr. Blix was very critical of the Iraqis on the 27th of January. He was more qualified on the 14th of February. I didn't know what he was going to say subsequently, but if he'd said, instead of producing 173 pages, raising very serious concerns, he produced 10 pages saying they're now complying, which he could have done on the 7th of March, the whole story would have been different. I mean, was there a plan B? I of course, thought about and made submissions about alternative approaches, for sure. That was part of my job, to think of the alternative contingencies, and I did so.
And one of the alternative contingencies was that we should give support to the United States, help with intelligence, with logistics, Diego Garcia and so on, but not necessarily take a full part in the operation.
Yes.
And how was that received?
Well, that had been one of the alternatives in terms of and options which had been examined, I suppose, going up to 12 months before that, as one of on a varying menu of participation. And I know you talked to Mr. Hoon about this when you interviewed him. But and you'll be aware that when we came to really have to make a decision in October of 2002 about the preferred military contribution we were going to make, there were three options put forward then, and on the advice of the then Chief of the Defence Staff, as well as other considerations, but very particularly on that advice, the Prime Minister agreed, and I supported him with going for the bigger option. How was my advice received? Well, I mean, you need to ask Mr. Blair this. I mean,
well, it's also a question of whether this was a discussion with other ministers as well, or was it just a question of you making a suggestion to the Prime Minister?
Well, I submitted formal minutes to him. I mean, this was far too serious to make suggestions to him. So I thought about this a very great deal. I talked to my officials and advisors in the Foreign Office and in the agencies about this. I prepared a paper for Mr. Blair. I talked to him about it. If you're asking me who else was present in discussions, I can't directly answer that, but just bear in mind that this was a very fast-moving situation, that I was spending a huge amount of time on the telephone trying to get up this second resolution, very often outside the country, and of course that doesn't stop communication, but it makes face-to-face meetings impossible.
And so this was not discussed with Mr. Hoon or Claire Short?
It might have been discussed with Mr. Hoon. I don't think I discussed it with Claire Short, not because I was... I've discussed a lot of things with Claire Short. No, I did.
I'm sure.
But this, any more than she discussed things on the international aid programme of that dimension with me. I mean, she may have asked me about this in the margins of a cabinet meeting, because this was, an issue before the cabinet every meeting, up until, well, and beyond the war. But in terms of the operations, I mean, who would I have discussed it with? In the office with Sir Peter Ricketts, with Dr. Michael Williams, who's my special advisor with huge experience of the United Nations, with my private secretary and other officials from the defence and security side of the office, and with David Manning, as well as obviously talking to Colin Powell about it.